يشبه الله البشر كلا وليس له صور لا يشبه الله البشر كلا وليس له صور وليس جسما فالحذر سبحانه رب عظيم وليس جسما فالحذر سبحانه رب عظيم سبحانه رب عظيم.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم ارزقنا الإخلاص في القول والعمل والنية. اللهم علمنا علما نافعا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. نوينا لله تبارك وتعالى. May Allah give us the sincere intentions and the good ending. Ameen. So last week we were talking about the emergence of the Bātini groups. Those people, and as we said, the Bātiniyyah is an umbrella term that spans several groups. Among them is the group known as al-Ismailiyah, which is one of the extreme exaggerating factions of Shia. Also the Fatimid or the Ubaydiyah, those who were rulers of Asha and Egypt in particular for an extended period of time, and the Qaramita. So we spoke about those groups, and we mentioned that they would charge each other with blasphemy. The Ubaydiyah would charge the Qaramita with blasphemy, as being blasphemers. They would declare them as being blasphemers, and they would even fight each other at times. Among the occasions in which they fought one another was during the time of al-Muḥizz al-Ubaydiyy, the Fatimid or Fatimiyya ruler in Egypt. Now this man, al-Muḥizz, he was titled al-Muḥizz li-Dinillah. This is how they used to call themselves. The most famous of them is titled al-Hakim bi-Amrillah. Al-Hakim bi-Amrillah. This al-Muḥizz, his name was Ma'ad, and his kunya was Abu Tamim. He was the son of al-Mansur ibn al-Qa'im ibn al-Mahdi Ubaydullah. Al-Muḥizz had been pledged allegiance as the heir apparent to the Ubaydiyah dynasty during the lifetime of his father al-Mansur Ismail. And then the allegiance was renewed for him after his death, and after the death of his father. And so he managed the affairs of their kingdom. He governed them. And one of the points of mentioning this is because sometimes these rulers were figureheads. They didn't actually govern. Rather, the control and the authority was in the hands of another, like an advisor. However, he was actually, from a governance point of view, good at what he did. That does not mean he governed justly, but rather he knew what he was doing, and he was not a fool, nor was his governance based on chaos. So he governed like that, according to their best provisions, until Dhul Hijjah in the year 341 after al-Hijrah, when he sat upon his royal throne on that day, and the elite and many common people entered upon him, greeted him with the Caliphate, and he took the title al-Muḥizz without showing grief over his father. So he was a serious person. He was a serious person. Then he went out to the lands of Ifriqiyah, touring through them to establish their foundations and secure their causes. The rebels among the people of those lands submitted to him and entered into his obedience. He appointed his servants and followers to various administrative positions and delegated to each region someone whose competence and nobility, according to his standards, were known to him, assigning to each of them a large assembly of soldiers and men at arms. Then he equipped Abul Hassan Jawhar, the commander, with a dense army to conquer what had resisted him in the lands of the Maghrib. So he proceeded to Fez, to Fas, then to Sijil and conquered them both. Then he headed to the Atlantic Ocean, Abul Hassan Jawhar. He went to the Atlantic Ocean, caught some fish, placed them in jars of water, and then sent them back to al-Muḥizz, for symbolic purposes, that now his kingdom extends to the ocean. Then he returned to al-Muḥizz with the ruler of Sijil Masa and the ruler of Fez as prisoners in iron cages. And the detailed account of this would be lengthy. The synopsis is that Jawhar, Abul Hassan Jawhar, did not return to his master al-Muḥizz except after having established the lands for him and under his control, and ruled over the people of deviation and obstinance from the gate of Ifriqiyah. Again, Ifriqiyah is modern day Tunisia, to the Atlantic Ocean in the west, and in the east from the gate of Ifriqiyah to the territories of Egypt. And no land from these territories remained except that his call was established in it. And he was mentioned in its Friday and congregational prayers, except for the city of Quetta, which remained under the control of Banu Buwayh, who were the rulers of al-Andalus at that time. Although Quetta is not in al-Andalus, Quetta, as we said before, is a very small city on a very small peninsula at the northern end of Morocco, which presently is considered a part of Spain. So it's not Moroccan territory, rather it is Spanish territory. And Quetta is the town of Qadi Iyad, rahimahullah, as well as other great scholars. When news reached al-Muḥizz of the death of Kafur al-Ikhshidi, the ruler of Egypt, and I did not speak actually at all about al-Ikhshidiyun, but perhaps at another time their rulership of Egypt can be mentioned with some more detail. So when Kafur al-Ikhshidi died, al-Muḥizz ordered Jawhar to prepare for departure to Egypt. Remember, Egypt is very big. The Ubaidiyyun controlled a part of northern Egypt, whereas other parts of Egypt towards the south, like where al-Qahirah, Cairo is, was controlled by the Ikhshidiyun. So al-Muḥizz, he ordered his commander Jawhar to prepare for the invasion of Egypt. He first went out toward the Maghrib to arrange his affairs, and he had with him a great army. He gathered the Arab tribes that he would take with him to Egypt and collected the grants that were due to the Berbers, which amounted to 500,000 dinar. Al-Muḥizz himself went out in the winter to al-Muḥizziyyah, which is in modern day Tunisia now, and that was their capital in the Maghrib, al-Muḥizziyyah, and brought out from his ancestors' palaces 500 loads of dinars and returned to his palace. When Jawhar returned with men and wealth, and his arrival at al-Muḥizz was toward the end of Muharram in the year 358 after al-Hijrah. Al-Muḥizz, he then ordered him to depart for Egypt. So he departed with various tribes, and al-Muḥizz spent an abundant amount of wealth on the army that accompanied him, even giving from 100,000 dinars, or from 1,000 dinars to 20,000 dinars. So here, what I have in the text, maybe this, I'll have to double check it. So what it says, from 1,000 dinar to 20. Sometimes, usually the smaller number is mentioned first. So sometimes what that means is from 1 to 20,000, from 1 to 20,000. But the way it is said in Arabic, it will be said من 1000 إلى 20. من 1000 إلى 20. From 1,000 to 20. Meaning from 1,000 to 20,000. Yeah, and most likely that's what's meant here, but I need to double check again. In any case, he spread a lot of money and he overwhelmed people with gifts. And there is no contradiction here that you may have people who are tyrants, who are bloodthirsty, who are deviant in creed and actions, but actually at the same time, they are generous with money. When they give to people, they give generously. But when they torture severely. So there are people who are like that. So the army that he prepared, they conducted business in al-Qahirah and Sabrah, purchasing all their needs, and they departed with 1,000 loads of water, weapons, horses, and equipment beyond description. In that year, Egypt experienced a great famine and plague, resulting in the deaths of 600,000 people in Egypt and its territories, as it was narrated. When the middle of Ramadan in that year arrived, good news reached al-Muḥizz of the conquest of the Egyptian territories and the entry of his armies into them. Then express messengers reached him, informing him of the details of the conquest, and Jawhar's letters continued to arrive, summoning him to Egypt and urging him constantly about it. Then he sent to him, informing him of the orderly state of affairs in Egypt, Asham, and the Hijaz, as well as the establishment of his call in these places. So remember the Ubaidiyyun, or the so-called Fatimiyah, who were extremist Shia. They ruled a large area of the Muslim lands, from Asham all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. So al-Muḥizz was greatly pleased by this when his foundations were established in the Egyptian territories. He appointed Bulakin ibn Ziri ibn Manad al-Sanhaji as his deputy over Ifriqiyah. Then al-Muḥizz, he departed, heading with considerable wealth and men of great importance. So he departed from al-Mansuriyah, his royal seat at that time, on a Monday, with 8 nights remaining in Shawwal in the year 361 after al-Hijrah. So al-Muḥizz, he moved to Sardania, where he stayed with his men, followers, and those he would take with him to gather. At this station, he made the covenant with Bulakin on the date mentioned in his biography and departed from there the following year. He continued on his journey, staying in some lands for periods of days and traveling quickly through others. His passage was through Barqa, and he entered Alexandria on Saturday, with 6 nights remaining of Sha'ban in that same year. He rode in it and entered the bath, and the judge, the Qadi of Egypt, came to him there, who was Abu Tahir, Muhammad ibn Ahmad, and the notables of the people of the lands, and they greeted him. He sat with them near the lighthouse and addressed them with a long speech, in which he told them that he did not intend to enter Egypt for an increase in his kingdom or for wealth, but rather he intended to establish justice, pilgrimage, and jihad, and to conclude his life with righteous deeds, and to act according to what his grandfather commanded. And he preached to them and spoke at length until some of those present wept. He bestowed robes of honor upon the judge and some members of the group, and provided them with mounts, any animals to ride. They then bid him farewell and departed. Then he departed from there at the end of Sha'ban. He then encamped on Saturday, the 2nd of Ramadan, at the port on the shore of Egypt at al-Giza, which is right next to Cairo, just on the other side of the Nile. And his commander, Jawhar, came out to him and dismounted. Upon meeting him and kissed the ground before him. At al-Giza, the wazir, Abu al-Fadl Ja'far ibn al-Furat, also met with him. Al-Muḥizz, he stayed there for 3 days, and the army began crossing with their baggage to the shore of Egypt. When it was Tuesday, the 5th day of Ramadan of that year, al-Muḥizz crossed the Nile and entered Cairo, and did not enter Misr, which had been decorated for him, and they thought he would enter it. The people of Cairo had not prepared to meet him because they had planned for him to enter Misr first. If it's not clear at that time what is now considered Cairo is a metropolis now. It was not like that in the past. In the past, you had the original settlement, you had Giza, which is ancient, and then you had the original settlement of Misr, and then later Cairo was built, which later expanded and developed into the metropolis that it is now. When he arrived in Cairo and at the palace, he entered a hall within it and fell to his knees in prostration. So this al-Muʿizz is the one to whom Cairo is attributed. So it is called in Arabic al-Qahirah al-Muʿizziyyah. al-Qahirah al-Muʿizziyyah. Because it was Commander Jawhar who built it for al-Muʿizz. On Friday, with 13 nights remaining in Muharram in the year 364 after al-Hijrah, al-Muʿizz, he dismissed Jawhar from his administrative offices of Egypt, the collection of its wealth and oversight of all its affairs. This al-Muʿizz, he was intelligent, resolute, generous, and literate. Yani, literate here does not mean merely he could read and write, but rather he was well read. He read a lot. He was well versed in literature. A man of letters, as it's called, or as one is called. He had good insight into astrology. He was born in al-Mahdiyyah on Monday, the 11th of Ramadan, in the year 319 after al-Hijrah, which is 931 in the Common Era. And he died on Friday, the 11th of the month of Rabi' al-Akhir, and according to some, the 13th, in the year 365 after al-Hijrah. Now, inshallah, we're going to shift from talking about the Ḥubaydiyyun, the so-called Fatimiyah, and we're going to speak about Banu Buwayh. Because remember, we said previously that the Ḥubaydiyyun, the Qaramita, had control over Bahrain, yani the Persian Gulf on the Arabian side, southern Iraq, the Asham, al-Hijaz, Egypt, North Africa was controlled by the Fatimiyah. At this time, the Al-Andalus was controlled by Banu Umayyah, and other parts of Iraq into Persia and Khurasan were controlled by Banu Buwayh at the time of al-Ash'ari radiyallahu anhu. So Banu Buwayh, they appeared on the stage, the historical stage, in the early 4th century after al-Hijrah, and established states, chiefdoms, emirates, outside the authority of the Abbasid Caliphate in Fars, Ahwaz, Kirman, Rai, Isfahan or Asfahan, and Hamadan. Then they extended, and all of those are in modern day Iran. And we spoke with detail as to where each of those places are. Then they extended their actual dominance over Iraq sharing in the Abbasid Caliphate's rule and the influence of this family, the Banu Buwayh family, grew. The members of this family, who traced their origins back to the Persians, lived in the land of Daylam. So they became known as if they were from there, at Daylamiyun or at Daylamiyah. They were common subjects. They were not, they didn't have a royal lineage or a lineage of nobility. They were commoners. And the first to emerge among them was Abu Shuja' Buwayh, one of the fishermen in the Caspian Sea, in the Sea of Qazwin. He had 3 sons, Ali, Hassan, and Ahmed. And this stage of their influence extends from the year 334 after al-Hijrah to the year 447. So that is the period of 113 years. And during this period, 4 caliphs from the Abbasids succeeded. al-Muṭi' lillah, al-Ta'i' lillah, al-Qadir billah, and al-Qa'im bi amrillah. Al-Muṭi' lillah, he is Abu al-Fadl al-Qasim ibn al-Muqtadir, who died in the year 360 after al-Hijrah. Al-Ta'i' lillah is Abu Bakr Abdul Karim ibn al-Muṭi', who died in the year 393 after al-Hijrah. It is mentioned, Sheikh Abdul Basit al-Fakhuri, in his history book, he mentioned that he was generous and brave, al-Ta'i', but his hands were tied by Banu Buwayh. He had no power, practically speaking. Al-Qadir billah is Abu al-Abbas Ahmad ibn Ishaq ibn al-Muqtadir, who died in the year 422 after al-Hijrah. It's mentioned that his religion was strong. He gave a lot in charity, and he was diligent and consistent in praying tahajjud, but he was only the caliph in name. He was only the caliph in name. As for al-Qa'im bi amrillah, he's Abu Ja'far Abdullah ibn al-Qadir billah, who died in 467 after al-Hijrah, who it said he was scrupulous, aesthetic, and a zuhud, zahid, knowledgeable. He was strong religiously and reliant upon Allah. He was strong in his tawakkul ala Allah, and a giver in charity, and a fulfiller of people's needs. And it is during his rulership that Banu Buwayh became extinct and the great Seljuk empire emerged, which inshallah we'll come to. So we said that Abu Shuja' Buwayh, he had 3 sons, Ali, Hassan, and Ahmed. Ali ibn Buwayh was able, thanks to his military and administrative capability and his generosity and good treatment of his followers, to build a strong army with which he seized most of the Persian lands in a short period and took the city of Shiraz as a base for his rule. The situation in Iraq was turbulent as the caliphate was under Turkish influence. And as we mentioned with some detail previously, and its inability to establish matters in Iraq became apparent. People felt this terrifying political void, so they looked to a new force that appeared near them to save them from chaos, just as some of the defeated rulers looked to the growing Buwayhiyyah power, hoping to obtain the privileges they had been deprived of or had been removed from through Banu Buwayh. Finally, the caliph leaned towards seeking help from Banu Buwayh. So he called Ahmad ibn Buwayh and asked him to enter Baghdad. So he entered Baghdad and with an army in the year 334 after al-Hijrah, after the Turks left it. And the caliph, al-Mustakfi, received him and celebrated him and bestowed honors upon him and appointed him commander of the commanders and titled him Muʿizz ad-Dawla and titled his brother Ali Imad ad-Dawla and titled his brother Hassan Rukn ad-Dawla. From then on, these grand titles became the familiar naming convention for Banu Buwayh princes. So Banu Buwayh, established in Fars, Iraq, Ahwaz, Kirman, Rai, Hamadan, and Isfahan, hereditary emirates that lasted until 447 after al-Hijrah. And this led to creating a kind of political stability in the Abbasid Caliphate state, during which Banu Buwayh controlled the reins of affairs. However, this stability was marred by some disturbances resulting from sectarian conflicts due to the Shi'ism, the Tashayyuʼ of the Buwayd family. So Banu Buwayh, they were not Sunnis, they were Shia. They were Shia. But they did not actually concern themselves with their tashayyuʼ and imposing Shi'ism upon others. That was not their main concern. Their main concern was ruling. So to a certain extent, they didn't care whether the people were Sunnis or other than that. And those that they employed, as long as it didn't encroach upon their rulership, some were Sunnis, some were Christians, some were Shia, somewhere other than that. Banu Buwayh worked to keep the Abbasid Caliphate as it was, because you might want, and did not attach it to the ḥUbaydiyy. So consider from the Atlantic Ocean to Khorasan, all of that was essentially ruled by some sort of Shia for over 100 years. All of that from Khorasan, Persia, all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. But the ḥUbaydiyyun in Egypt and Asham and North Africa, they were stronger militarily. However, these two factions, they did not unite, and Banu Buwayh did not hand over power or rulership to the stronger Shia faction. Al-Hafiz ibn al-Athir, rahimahullah, he says, I have learned that Muʿizz ad-Dawla consulted a group of his close companions about removing the caliphate from the Abbasids and allegiance to al-Muḥizz, li-Dinillah, al-Ubaydiyy, or any other of the Alawiyah. What he means by Alawiyah is Shia. All of them, because you may wonder, if you have the Shia ruling this vast land and the Abbasid Caliph was powerless in Baghdad, why don't they just chop his head off or depose him and replace him? So Ibn al-Athir, he is narrating why, although this idea came up, why they did not decide to do it. So he said, all of them advised him, all of those companions of Muʿizz ad-Dawla advised him of this. They advised him to depose, get rid of the Abbasid Caliph, and let's unite with the ḥUbaydiyyun, or replace the Sunni Abbasid Caliph with a Shi'i Caliph. They all told him to do it, except for one of his elite supporters. For he said, this is not my opinion. For today, you and your companions believe you are with a caliph, the Abbasid Caliph, who is not qualified for the caliphate. And if you ordered them to kill him, they would kill him, considering his blood permissible. Furthermore, whenever you instill one of the Alawiyah as caliph, whoever believes in his caliphate's legitimacy will be with him. If he ordered them to kill you, they would do it. So he turned away from that, and Muʿizz ad-Dawla took control of Iraq entirely. And nothing remained in the caliph's hands at all, except what Muʿizz ad-Dawla granted him from what would sustain some of his needs. So he was a figurehead that they left in place. In the year 422, so if you remember, we said that Banu Buwayh, their extended rulership, once they entered Baghdad, they're ruling parts of Asham, or sorry, they were ruling parts of Persia during the lifetime of al-Ash'ari, radiyallahu anhu. Then they entered Baghdad in the year 334 after al-Hijrah, and the rulership lasted, that stage of the rulership lasted until the year 447 after al-Hijrah. 447 after al-Hijrah. Now, in the year 422, Abdullah ibn Ahmad al-Qadir assumed the Abbasid Caliphate upon his father's death. And he was his father's heir apparent during his lifetime, who gave him the title al-Qa'im bi-Amrillah. Thus, he was the fourth and last caliph during Banu Buwayh's control over the state, over the Abbasid state. Banu Buwayh were extending bridges to the Fatimid, ḥUbaydiyy, and correspondence was exchanged between them, who at that time had extended their influence to Egypt and parts of the Levant, with their great ambition to obtain more territories. Sometimes they would ally with the Crusaders to stand against the Seljuks, hoping they would leave them the southern parts of the Levant. The Fatimiyya ruler at that time was al-Mustansir Muhammad ibn Ali. With the rise to prominence of one of the Buwayhi commanders, who was Arslan al-Basasiriyy, the Turk, whom and this is not al-Arslan, this is not al-Arslan, this is someone else named Arslan al-Basasiriyy, whom the caliph al-Qa'im bi-Amrillah had placed in charge of all commanders and entrusted him with affairs. His status grew, his reputation spread, his name became renowned, and the emirs feared him. This man, al-Basasiriyy, he was from the town Bassa, which is in Fars. So someone from Bassa is called al-Basasiriyy. Yani Bassa or Fassa. And sometimes they're called Fasawi. The caliph at that time would not decide any matter without him, nor resolve or conclude except with his opinion. So his control extended to include the Buwayhi king himself, who was known as al-Malik al-Rahim. This is what they called him. The king, the ruler of Banu Buwayh, they called him al-Malik al-Rahim, as if they want to say the merciful king. His title was the merciful king. His name was Khusraw, Abu Nasr Khusraw ibn Abi Khalija ibn Sultan al-Dawla ibn Baha al-Dawla ibn Adud al-Dawla ibn Rukn al-Dawla ibn Buwayh. Remember, Rukn al-Dawla is the third son, Hassan. And he was the last of the kings of Banu Buwayh al-Daylam. In the year 447, correspondence took place. So now we've jumped ahead 25 years. Okay. During the rulership of al-Qa'im bi amrillah al-Abbasi, or the reign. So in the year 447, correspondence took place between al-Basasiriyy and al-Mustansir al-Ubaydiyy, requesting financial and military support and informing him of his intention to abolish the Abbasid Caliphate. Now this al-Mustansir, he was called al-Mustansir billah. He was the son of al-Zahir li-Dinillah ibn al-Hakim ibn al-Aziz ibn al-Muḥizz li-Dinillah. He was given the oath of allegiance after the death of his father al-Zahir in the year 427. During his days, a great famine occurred, the like of which had not been experienced since the time of Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. That famine lasted 7 years, during which time people ate one another. Some people turned to cannibalism, until it was reported that a single loaf of bread was sold for 50 dinars. Al-Mustansir, during this hardship, would ride alone, while all his special attendants walked on foot, having no animals to ride. When they walked, they would collapse in the streets from hunger. At the end, al-Mustansir's mother and daughters went to Baghdad due to the extreme hunger, and that was in the year 462 after al-Hijrah. And the people of Egypt scattered throughout the lands and were dispersed. And this situation continued in its severity until Badr al-Jamali, Abu al-Fadl, moved to Egypt and took charge of managing affairs, whereupon things were set right. And all of that has a lengthy explanation. Now, al-Hafiz ibn al-Jawzi, he says in his book al-Muntazzam, and al-Muntazzam is a history book which has a lot of beneficial information in it. So the one who likes to read detailed historical accounts, that is an indispensable reference. Al-Muntazam. So Ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, he said, and the ruler of Egypt, meaning the Ubaydiyy, the Fatimid king, wrote to him, wrote to al-Basasiriyy. Remember, we said that he wanted to abolish the Abbasid Caliphate. mentioning his obedience to him and that he would establish the call for him in Iraq. So he supplied him with money and appointed him as governor. Ibn al-Athir, he says, and Ra'is al-Ru'asa, who, this is a title. This is like saying the Ra'is al-Ru'asa, the boss of bosses, or the boss of bosses, or the president of presidents, something like this. Ra'is means boss, or can mean president. So this person, this minister, who's called the Ra'is al-Ru'asa, his kunya was Abu al-Qasim. His name was Ali ibn al-Hasan ibn Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Umar. He was the wazir, the minister of al-Qa'im, bi amrillah al-Abbasi. He was knowledgeable in many areas, and he was sound in opinion, and he had intellect. He was an advisor to al-Qa'im for 12 years in 1 month. Then al-Basasiriyy killed him. So Ibn al-Athir, he says that Ra'is al-Ru'asa let loose his tongue regarding al-Basasiriyy and his blood, and attributed it to the correspondence with al-Mustansir, ruler of Egypt, and corrupted the situation with the caliph to an extent beyond hope of reconciliation. So he sent to al-Malik al-Rahim, ordering him to banish al-Basasiriyy. So he banished him. And this situation was among the greatest reasons for Sultan Tughril's control of Iraq and the arrest of al-Malik al-Rahim. Remember, Tughril Bek was the Sultan of the Seljuks, which we will come to. All of this is leading into the emergence of the great Seljuk Empire. When al-Malik al-Rahim al-Buwayh heard of Tughril's approach to Baghdad, al-Basasiriyy parted ways due to a correspondence received from al-Qa'im, meaning to al-Malik al-Rahim that al-Basasiriyy has withdrawn obedience and corresponded with the enemies, meaning the Egyptians, yani that is the Ḥubaydiyyun, and that the caliph has pledged to the king his covenant, and he has the same from the caliph. So if he prefers him, he has cut off what is between them. And if he banishes him and comes to Baghdad, the Diwan will take charge of managing his affairs. So al-Malik al-Rahim and those with him said, we are followers of the Diwan's orders, and we have separated from him, al-Basasiriyy. The Abbasid Caliph, al-Qa'im, learned of the growing power of the Seljuks, especially since they followed the Sunni school and respected the caliph. So he corresponded with Tughril, requesting that he come to Baghdad to protect the caliphate, break al-Basasiriy's strength, and end Banu Buwayh's authority. Tughril, whose name was Muhammad ibn Mika'il ibn Seljuk, ibn Duqaq, who was titled Ruknuddin. His kunya was Abu Talib. Tughril. He was the first of the Seljuk kings. And originally he is from Sinjar. And they were a people of number and strength who would not submit to the Sultan's authority. When someone they could not resist came against them, they would enter the deserts. When Sultan Mahmud crossed into Transoxiana, he won over their leader, who then came to him and was seized. Then it was agreed to disperse the nobles of his people throughout the regions and impose tribute upon them. So they entered into obedience and became civilized. But people coveted them and oppressed them. So 1,000 households separated from them and went to Kirman, whose ruler at that time was Baha'u'd-Dawla ibn Buwayh, who honored them. He died shortly after. So they feared the Daylamiyah, and Banu Buwayh, and they headed to Asfahan, camping outside it. Its ruler at that time was Ala'ud-Dawla ibn Kakawayh, who desired them and employed them. Sultan Mahmud, yani al-Ghaznawi, rahimahullah, he wrote to him ordering him to fight them. So they fought, and a group of them was killed. The survivors headed to Azerbaijan. Then Sultan Mahmud himself pursued them and scattered them. He died, and his son Mas'ud succeeded him. Needing soldiers, he went to those of them in Azerbaijan, and 1,000 horsemen came to him. So he organized them as his father had done initially, then entered India, leaving the lands empty for them. They spread corruption throughout, and their power continued to grow and strengthen until they conquered Rai, then Naysabur. Then Sultan Mas'ud ibn Mahmud became too weak to resist them. Then Tughril conquered Iraq in the year 447 after al-Hijrah, ruling the people with justice. He, Sultan Tughril was a gentle, generous king who maintained the Jama'ah prayers. He fasted on Mondays and Thursdays. He died months later in Rai in the year 445 after al-Hijrah at the age of 70 years old. And he was transported to Marw and buried beside the grave of his brother Dawood. The Sultan used to give much in charity, and he would say, I am ashamed before Allah to build a house without building a masjid beside it. And his marriage contract with the daughter of al-Qa'im was concluded outside Tabriz in the year 453 after al-Hijrah. When death approached him, he said, "My example is like that of a sheep whose legs are tied for shearing wool, thinking it will be slaughtered, so it struggles. But when released, it rejoices. Then it is tied for slaughter, thinking it is for shearing wool, so it becomes calm." He said, "This illness I am in is the tying of the legs for slaughter." And he died from it. The daughter of al-Qa'im lived with him for only 6 months and died after him in the year 496 after al-Hijrah. And the Sultan, Tughril left no male child, and the kingdom passed to his nephew, Arslan, rahimahullah. Tughril so he came from Rai, which, remember, Rai is right outside of Tehran. And he entered Baghdad, and al-Basasiriyy left with his army to a place between Raqqa, which is in Syria along the Euphrates River, and Baghdad, called al-Rahbah. And al-Mustansir supplied him with what he had wanted of money and weapons. During this time, a riot occurred in Baghdad. Some people thought that al-Malik al-Rahim and his army had resolved to fight Tughril, so the country was disturbed in its regions. They came from every direction, infiltrating and killing any Turks found in Baghdad's neighborhoods. However, the common people of Baghdad were not satisfied with what they did, resulting in chaos and turmoil. The Buwayh king was arrested and imprisoned in a fortress near Rai, where he remained for 3 years before dying. With Tughril's arrival and the Buwayh king's exit from Baghdad, the Banu Buwayh era ended. Tughril came in the year 447 after al-Hijrah. So al-Basasiriyy went to al-Rahbah, and a group of Turks joined him. The ruler of Egypt corresponded with him and supplied him with money. Yenal, who is Tughril's brother, and it's Yenal or Tinal. In some books, his name is what is written in some historical books is Tinal with a ta, and in other books, Yenal with a ya. In any case, Yenal, Tughril's brother, corresponded and tempted him with his brother's position. So Yenal came out, and Tughril became occupied with restraining and deterring him from what they wanted from him. Then al-Basasiriyy came to Baghdad in the year 450 with Egyptian banners, and fighting occurred between him and the caliph. The call was made for the ruler of Egypt, al-Mustansir, at the Mansour Masjid, and then the Friday sermon was given for him in all masjids except the caliph's masjid. And the fighting continued for a month. Then al-Basasiriyy captured the caliph in Dhul Hijjah, took him to Haditha, Ana, and imprisoned him there. As for Tughril, he captured his brother and killed him. Then the governor of Haditha, Ana, returned the caliph to his home with honor, and the caliph arrived at his headquarters on the 25th of Dhul Qa'dah in the year 451 after al-Hijrah. He entered with great pomp with the emirs and chamberlains before him. Ibn al-Athir, he says in Al-Kamil, Tughril entered in Baghdad, that is after he first finished dealing with the betrayal committed by his brother, Ibrahim Yanal, and he had sent from the road Imam Abu Bakr Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Ayyub, known as Ibn Furak. And this is not the same Hafiz Abu Bakr ibn al-Furak, who was a student of Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Bahili. This is another person who was also famous by the same kunya, Abu Bakr, and known as Ibn Furak. So he was sent to Quraysh ibn Badran. Quraysh ibn Badran al-Uqayli, who died in the year 453. He was the ruler of Mosul and Nisibin. So he was sent to him, thanking him for his treatment of the caliph and his protection in guarding his brother's daughter, the caliph's wife, and informing him that he had sent Abu Bakr ibn Furak to serve the caliph and bring Arslan Khatun, his brother's daughter, the caliph's wife, so forth and so on. When he arrived at where the caliph al-Qa'im was, Ibn Furak delivered Tughril's message to him, and many gifts were sent with them. Tughril prepared an army that fought al-Basasiriyy, defeated him, killed him, and carried his head to Baghdad. Al-Muḥizziyyah stated that al-Muḥizziyyah is a famous historian and a Hanafi scholar. He stated that the aggressors who attacked the Caliphate house and looted it forced the Abbasid Caliph al-Qa'im before his departure from Baghdad to write a covenant in which he acknowledged that neither Banu Abbas nor himself had any right to the caliphate with the presence of the sons of Fatima al-Zahra. He says in al-Muḥizziyyah, as for the turban and the cloak, meaning the turban and the cloak of the Abbasid Caliph al-Qa'im, Sultan Salahuddin Yusuf sent them both when he took control of the palace, meaning the palace of the Fatimid king in Egypt, to the Abbasid Caliph al-Mustansir in Baghdad, along with the document that al-Qa'im had written against himself and had witnesses testify that Banu Abbas had no right to the caliphate with the presence of the sons of Fatima al-Zahra. We have not seen this report except in al-Muḥizziyyah. The Fatimid Ḥubaydiyy rulers claimed to be from the lineage of Fatima, the Prophet's daughter, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, to win the hearts of the Muslims who love the Prophet's family, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, wa radiyallahu an ahli bayti Rasulillah. And because of that, because of the love that the Muslims have for Ahlul Bayt and Fatimah al-Zahra, radiyallahu anha, those Ubaidiyyun, they call themselves Fatimiyah. يعني والله سبحانه وتعالى أعلم وأحكم. طيب، فسبحان الله وبحمده وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأستغفر الله وأتوب إليه. لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات. وبارك الله فيكم وأحسن الله إليكم وجزاكم الله ألف خير. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
لا يشبه الله البشر كلا وليس له صور. لا يشبه الله البشر كلا وليس له صور. وليس جسما فالحذر سبحانه رب عظيم. وليس جسما فالحذر سبحانه رب عظيم. سبحانه